Karen snatched the envelope, her hands trembling slightly as she read. Violation notice. Unpermitted deck extension. Non-compliant sprinkler system. Illegal drainage modification. Total fines. $3,200. This has to be a mistake. The city inspector was very thorough. Apparently, when you complain about someone's water usage, they investigate all the water usage in the area. Jake's voice held no satisfaction, only tired resignation. Karen, I tried to handle this quietly. I really did, but you forced my hand. Forced your hand? You're the one who? I'm the one who maintained his pool according to manufacturer specifications and local ordinances. You're the one who spent 2 days harassing me, lying about me online, and now accidentally getting yourself cited by the city. Karen stared at the violation notice, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. She was the responsible one. She was the one who enforced standards, not violated them. This isn't over, she said quietly. Jake sighed. Karen, it really should be, for both our sakes. But as she watched him walk away, Karen felt something harder than determination settle in her chest. Jake Martinez had no idea who he was dealing with. And tomorrow, he was going to find out exactly how far Karen Whitmore would go to protect her community and her authority. Friday morning found Karen parked outside the city planning office at 7:30 a.m., clutching a coffee that had long since gone cold and a briefcase full of what she called counter evidence. She'd spent all night researching municipal codes, printing satellite photos of Jake's property, and preparing arguments that would surely prove the city's violation notice was nothing more than bureaucratic overreach. I need to speak to whoever issued this erroneous citation, she announced to the receptionist, slapping the violation notice on the counter with theatrical flair. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Inspector Williams, a middle-aged woman who looked like she'd heard every homeowner excuse in the book. Mrs. Whitmore, the violations on your property are quite clear. Your deck extends beyond the permitted footprint, your sprinkler system isn't up to current water conservation standards, and the drainage modification you made last spring wasn't properly permitted. But Jake Martinez has no violations on his property. His pool drainage was completely legal and properly executed. Inspector Williams leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Whitmore, you called us to investigate water waste. We found some on your property. Karen felt her carefully constructed world tilting off its axis. That's impossible. I follow every rule, every regulation. I'm the HOA president. Being HOA president doesn't exempt you from city ordinances. The inspector's voice was patient but firm. You have 30 days to correct these violations or face additional penalties. Driving home in defeat, Karen's phone buzzed with notifications. The Willowbrook Circle Facebook group was exploding with activity. Someone, probably that traitor Linda, had shared a photo of city inspectors at Karen's house. Guess the water waste investigation found the real problem. Maybe Karen should focus on her own violations before harassing neighbors. Anyone else find it ironic that our rule enforcer is the biggest rule breaker on the block? Karen pulled into her driveway and sat in her car, staring at the comments multiplying on her phone. Her perfectly manicured authority was crumbling in real time, one laughing emoji at a time. That's when she saw Jake in his backyard, installing what looked like a new pool filter system. He was talking to Bob Fletcher, her board member, and they were both laughing about something. Something inside Karen snapped. She marched straight to Jake's fence. You think you're so clever, don't you? Jake looked up, his expression cautious. Karen, I really think we should. You orchestrated this whole thing. Called your lawyer friends, probably bribed the city inspector, turned my own neighbors against me. Her voice was rising with each accusation, all because I dared to hold you accountable. Karen, you reported yourself to the city. I didn't have anything to do with Lalaya. The word erupted from her with such force that Bob actually stepped backward. You planned this from the beginning. Moving into my neighborhood, deliberately violating community standards, and then playing the victim when someone had the courage to stand up to you. Jake set down his tools, his patience finally exhausted. Karen, listen to yourself. You've called the police on me, lied about me online, posted flyers calling me a thief, and somehow convinced yourself that I'm the problem here. You are the problem. Karen's finger jabbed toward him accusingly. You and everyone like you who think rules don't apply to them, who think community standards are just suggestions. Karen Whitmore stood at her kitchen window, her morning coffee growing cold, as she watched in absolute horror. Her new neighbor, Jake Martinez, was draining his pool, his own pool. But that wasn't what made Karen's eye twitch with righteous indignation. It was where the water was going. He's stealing our community water, she shrieked to her husband Brad, who was trying to eat his cereal in peace. Look at it. Gallons and gallons pouring right into the storm drain. That's our water, Brad. Brad glanced up wearily. Karen, it's his pool. He can wait? Waste precious community resources. I don't think so. Karen was already reaching for her phone, her fingers flying over the screen with practiced efficiency. She'd called the police 17 times in the past month. Surely they knew her number by heart by now. 911. What's your emergency? Yes, this is Karen Whitmore at 1247 Willowbrook Circle. I need officers here immediately. My neighbor is stealing water. Thousands of gallons. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol cars had arrived, their lights painting the pristine suburban street in alternating reds and blues. Karen positioned herself strategically on her front lawn, arms crossed, as Officer Rodriguez approached Jake's property. Sir, we received a report about water theft. Jake, still in his swim trunks and holding a pool skimmer, looked genuinely confused. Water theft? I'm just draining my pool for winter maintenance. Same thing I do every year. That's not the point. Karen marched over, her HOA president badge gleaming on her flowered blouse. The covenant clearly states that all water usage must be approved by the community board. Section 4.7, subsection C. Officer Rodriguez rubbed his temples. Ma'am, that's not actually a police matter. It absolutely is when it involves theft. Karen's voice pitched higher. That water could be used for our community garden, or the fountain at the clubhouse, or anything. Instead, it's just going down the drain like he doesn't care about our property values. Jake stared at her in disbelief. Lady, it's chlorinated pool water. You can't use it for plants or fountains. And it's coming from my water bill. But Karen was already pulling out a thick binder from seemingly nowhere, her emergency HOA reference guide. According to Municipal Code 247B, all water runoff exceeding 50 gallons requires a permit. The second officer, Martinez, no relation to Jake, looked at his partner with the expression of someone who dealt with Karen before. Ma'am, we're going to need you to step back and let this gentleman maintain his property. His property. His property. Karen's face was turning an alarming shade of red. This entire neighborhood is a community. When one person makes selfish decisions, we all suffer the consequences. As if summoned by her outrage, 3 more neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Peterson from next door shook her head, while the Johnsons whispered to each other behind their fence. Karen, Jake said, attempting diplomacy, I sent a notice to the HOA office 3 weeks ago about the pool maintenance. I followed all the proper procedures. Karen's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. Show me the documentation. It's inside. Look, I can get it. No documentation, no proof. Karen declared triumphantly, turning to the officers. I want him cited for water theft, improper disposal, and violation of community standards. Officer Rodriguez sighed deeply. Ma'am, this is a civil matter between neighbors. We can't arrest someone for draining their own pool. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Not arrest him, but she was the HOA president. She'd called the police. There were regulations. Fine, she said, her voice dropping to an ominous whisper. If the law won't protect our community, then I'll have to take matters into my own hands. As the police cars pulled away and the neighbors dispersed, Karen stood alone on her perfectly manicured lawn, watching Jake continue his pool maintenance. A dangerous gleam entered her eyes. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. By 6 a.m. the next morning, Karen had already been awake for 2 hours, her dining room table covered with printed emails, municipal codes, and HOA bylaws arranged in color-coded folders. She'd found it. The smoking gun that would finally prove Jake Martinez was a menace to their community. "Brad," she called, her voice cutting through the morning silence. "Look at this. Section 12.4 of the HOA agreement. Any water feature modifications require written approval from the board and a licensed contractor's assessment." Brad appeared in his bathrobe, looking like a man who'd long since given up on peaceful mornings. "Karen, he drained a pool, not modified it." Karen's uncertainty lasted exactly 12 hours. By Thursday morning, she had developed what she called the Martinez Protocol, a comprehensive strategy to bring her rebellious neighbor to heel. Phase 1 had been documentation and official warnings. Phase 2 would be community pressure and social isolation. She started with the Willowbrook Circle Facebook group, where she posted a lengthy message at 5:47 a.m. "Dear neighbors, it pains me to report that we have a rogue resident among us. Jake Martinez has shown complete disregard for our community standards by draining thousands of gallons of water without proper authorization. When confronted with his violations, he became hostile and refused to comply with board directives. This kind of selfish behavior threatens everyone's property values. Please join me in encouraging Mr. Martinez to be a better neighbor. #community first, #property values, #accountability." By noon, the post had 37 comments, ranging from confused questions to outright support for Jake. Karen furiously typed responses to each dissenting voice. "Linda, just because everyone drains their pools doesn't make it right. Rules exist for a reason." "Tom, I'm shocked that you'd side with someone who clearly doesn't respect our community covenant." "Maria, your attitude is exactly why our neighborhood association fees keep going up." But her digital campaign was only the beginning. Karen had also printed flyers, bright yellow paper with bold red text. "Water the IEFALEFT. Jake Martinez, 1251 Willowbrook Circle, has stolen community resources and refuses to pay required fines. Protect your property values. Demand accountability." She spent her lunch break taping them to mailboxes throughout the neighborhood, humming to herself as she worked. This was community service at its finest. Her satisfaction was short-lived. By 3 p.m., her phone was ringing. "Karen Whitmore, this is David Chen from Morrison, Chen and Associates. I represent Jake Martinez." The bottom dropped out of Karen's stomach. "A lawyer? He got a lawyer? My client has asked me to inform you that your flyers constitute harassment and defamation. He's prepared to file a restraining order if this behavior continues." Karen's grip tightened on the phone. "Defamation? I'm stating facts. He drained his pool without authorization." "Mrs. Whitmore, draining one's own pool requires no authorization from an HOA. Furthermore, your Facebook posts and flyers contain false statements about theft and fines that have no legal basis. I am the duly elected president of this HOA. I have authority to enforce legally binding covenants, yes, not to invent new rules or harass residents." The lawyer's voice was professionally calm, which somehow made it more intimidating. "I'm advising you to cease all contact with my client, remove the defamatory posts, and refrain from further harassment." "Harassment?" Karen's voice pitched higher. "I'm protecting this community. Mrs. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you consult your own attorney before taking any further action. Good day." The line went dead, leaving Karen staring at her phone in disbelief. A lawyer, Jake Martinez, thought he could intimidate her with legal threats? Well, he was about to learn that Karen Whitmore didn't back down from fights. She escalated them. She immediately called Brad at work. "I need the number for that lawyer who helped us with the fence dispute." "Karen, please tell me you're not. Jake Martinez thinks he can bully me with some hotshot attorney. I'll show him exactly what kind of legal resources the HOA has at its disposal." "We don't have legal resources. We have a coffee fund and a small budget for landscaping." But Karen was already Googling HOA attorneys near me. If Jake wanted a legal battle, she'd give him one he'd never forget. By evening, she had contacted 3 law firms, filed a formal complaint with the city about water waste, and started drafting a letter to the local newspaper about the erosion of community standards in suburban America. She was typing furiously when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she could see Jake Martins standing on her porch, holding a manila envelope. "Karen," he said when she opened the door, "I really hoped it wouldn't come to this. If that's a legal threat, you can tell your lawyer." "It's not from my lawyer. It's from the city." Jake's expression was grim. "Turns out your complaint about water waste triggered an investigation. They found some interesting things about your own property. Draining is modifying. The water level changed, didn't it?" Karen's logic was bulletproof in her mind. She grabbed her phone and speed-dialed Jake's number, which she'd somehow acquired from the HOA emergency contact list. The phone rang 4 times before Jake's groggy voice answered. "Hello? Mr. Martinez, this is Karen Whitmore, HOA president. I need you at the community center in 1 hour for an emergency hearing regarding your flagrant violations." "What violations?" "Karen, it's 6 in the morning. Punctuality is a virtue, Mr. Martinez. 1 hour." She hung up, already dialing her board members. By 7:15 a.m., Karen had assembled what she generously called a tribunal in the community center's main room. Present were herself, elderly Mrs. Henderson, who came for the free coffee and had no idea why she was there, and Bob Fletcher, who only agreed to show up because Karen had threatened to review his backyard shed permit. Jake arrived looking harried, still in yesterday's clothes. "Karen, what is this about?" "Mr. Martinez, you stand accused of multiple violations of our community covenant." Karen stood behind a makeshift podium, her binder open to a page covered in highlighted text, specifically, unauthorized water feature modification, failure to obtain proper permits, environmental contamination of community resources, and disruption of neighborhood harmony. "I drained my pool without proper authorization." Karen's voice boomed in the small room. "Mrs. Henderson, please note that the defendant has admitted to the unauthorized nature of his actions." Mrs. Henderson, who was mostly deaf, nodded and sipped her coffee. Jake ran his hands through his hair. "I sent the notice 3 weeks ago. I have the email confirmation right here." He pulled out his phone, but Karen waved dismissively. "Email confirmations can be fabricated. We need hard copies, properly notarized, with appropriate stamps." "Stamps? Karen, this is a 1952. Standards exist for a reason, Mr. Martinez." Karen consulted her notes dramatically. "The board has decided that your pool must be refilled immediately, using only community-approved water sources, and you must pay a fine of $500 for the violations." Bob Fletcher finally spoke up. "Karen, we can't just make up fines. Section 15.7 gives the board discretionary authority over community standards." Karen's finger jabbed at the relevant passage. "If we don't enforce these rules, our entire neighborhood will descend into chaos." Jake stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to refill the pool I'm winterizing? That's insane." Insane is allowing residents to think they can do whatever they want with community resources. Karen's face was flushed with righteous anger. "What's next? Will you decide to tear down your house without approval? Paint it hot pink? Install a car wash in your driveway? Those aren't even remotely the same thing." But Karen was on a roll now, pacing behind her podium like a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. "This is about respect, Mr. Martinez. Respect for your neighbors, respect for our shared values, respect for the systems that keep property values high and communities strong." Jake looked around the room desperately. "Mrs. Henderson, you can't possibly agree with this." Mrs. Henderson smiled pleasantly. "The coffee is quite good, dear." Karen slammed her gavel, a wooden spoon she'd brought from home. "The board has spoken. You have 48 hours to comply with our ruling, or we'll be forced to take legal action." "Legal action? For draining my own pool? For violating community trust?" Karen said solemnly. "Bob, please note that Mr. Martinez has shown no remorse for his actions." Bob was already gathering his things. "I'm out of here. Karen, you've lost your mind." As Bob left, Karen called after him, "Your shed permit review is scheduled for next Tuesday." Alone with Mrs. Henderson and an increasingly frustrated Jake, Karen felt the familiar surge of power that came with protecting her community. "Mr. Martinez, I hope you'll reconsider your attitude. We're all on the same side here." "No, Karen, we're really not." Jake stood up, his jaw set with determination. "And if you think I'm going to be bullied by someone who calls the cops on people for maintaining their own property, you're about to learn just how wrong you can be." As Jake left, slamming the door behind him, Karen felt a small flutter of uncertainty. But she quickly pushed it down. She was right. She was always right. And soon, Jake Martinez would understand that nobody challenged Karen Whitmore's authority in Willowbrook Circle. "What community standards?" Jake's voice was rising now too. "You mean the ones you make up on the spot? The fake fines? The imaginary permits?" Other neighbors were coming out of their houses now, drawn by the shouting. Karen could see Mrs. Peterson recording with her phone, Linda and Tom whispering behind their fence. Her audience was growing, and with it, her sense of righteous vindication. "This is what happens," she announced to the gathering crowd. "This is what happens when we let people get away with selfish behavior, when we're too polite to enforce standards, when we let troublemakers think they can do whatever they want." "Karen," Bob Fletcher said quietly, "maybe you should go inside. Don't you dare tell me what to do. I'm trying to protect this neighborhood, and all you people can do is side with someone who's clearly trying to destroy our property values." Jake looked around at the neighbors, then back at Karen with something that might have been pity. "Karen, my pool is winterized. My property is in full compliance with city codes. I've never violated a single HOA rule, and I've tried to be patient with you even when you've made my life hell for the past week." "Patient?" Karen laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You want to see patience? Wait until the next board meeting. Wait until I present my full report on your violations. Wait until this community sees what kind of person you really are. And what kind of person am I, Karen?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Karen faltered. What kind of person was Jake Martinez? Someone who maintained his property responsibly, followed proper procedures, and tried to handle her harassment with remarkable restraint? No, that couldn't be right. "You're a troublemaker," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Someone who doesn't respect community standards." Jake nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "Karen, I hope you get the help you need. I really do." He turned and walked into his house, leaving Karen standing at the fence, surrounded by neighbors who were no longer looking at her with respect or even annoyance, but with something much worse: pity. As the crowd dispersed, Karen stood alone in her yard, the city violation notice crumpled in her hand. She'd been so sure she was protecting her community, so certain she was upholding standards and maintaining order. But looking at her house now, really looking at it for the first time in months, she could see the unpermitted deck, the questionable sprinkler setup, the drainage that had seemed like such a good idea at the time. Her phone buzzed. Another Facebook notification. Someone had posted a photo of her shouting at Jake, with the caption, "When you're so busy policing everyone else, you forget to check yourself." Karen walked slowly to her front door, past the perfectly arranged flower beds and regulation-compliant mailbox, into a house that suddenly felt very quiet and very empty. Through her kitchen window, she could see Jake's pool, properly winterized and legally maintained. Tomorrow, she knew, she'd have to figure out how to fix her own violations, how to repair her reputation, how to live in a neighborhood where she was no longer the respected authority figure, but simply Karen Whitmore, the woman who tried to police a pool and ended up policing herself. But tonight, as she sat in her perfect living room with her color-coded violation notices spread across the coffee table, one question echoed in her mind. If Jake Martinez wasn't the troublemaker in this story, then who was? The answer, she was beginning to suspect, wasn't going to be easy to face. But face it she would have to, because Monday morning would bring new challenges, new neighbors, and the dawning realization that sometimes the very thing you're trying to protect is the thing you end up destroying. And Karen Whitmore's war with Willowbrook Circle was far from over.